freight efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.
Here in episode 129, we have Susan Fall. She's owner of LaunchIt PR, where she talks about her work during the pioneering days of telematics and trucking, the importance of messaging when introducing a product, and she shares some of her success stories with clients. She also talks about why it's wrong to cut marketing and public relations efforts when times are slow, and she offers advice to both tech companies and fleets to help the industry stay strong. Today we have joining us Susan Fall, owner of LaunchIt PR. Hello, Susan. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike.
I do think we've got something really in common, and that's like we cheer for innovation, particularly, and we've both been in trucking a long time. So those two don't always meet up. You know, trucking's a little bit, not risk averse, but we got important work to do, so we got to be careful. But would you agree we both like technology and we both been in trucking a long time?
100%. I mean, that's trucking tech is what I do, and it's all I do. So, yeah, we definitely have that in common. And I've been racking my brain, really trying to think about when we first met. It's way before NACFE. I know that I did the very first roundtable that you did at maybe it was either the first or second ACT Expo in Long Beach. So I don't know how long ago that was. And I think it was NACFE's very first time, and we were you put together this group of people to come, and each various expert took a table. I honestly I can't remember the topic of my table. Yeah.
That's exactly how I remember it too. So I want to say 2014, maybe probably 2014 is the event you're talking about, and I've got evidence for this. So we we created NACFE does tons of videos, so we created a video on NACFE workshops. It's still on our website, and you're in it.
Oh boy.
It was from that because I was doing the same thing. I was racking my brain trying to remember where we started working together or met, and I think it was there. I think probably we could have bypassed one another at Navistar. I had done the severe service construction dump truck concrete mixer program at International Trucks, and so I was doing a lot of like shows and industry events and press conferences. So it could have been back then, but I know for sure that workshop you're bringing up is exactly right. So you've got it. You've got it. So yeah. We went through. We did a lot of workshops in the 2014 to 18 timeframe, and then we kind of hunkered down a little bit and kicked off Run on Less. And so we've come back to some workshops in the last couple of years. So LaunchIt, the firm's 25 years old. Do I have that right?
You do. I started.
Wow. So tell us about it. How did it start?
Sure.
What's
Well,
been some of the biggest joys and challenges? Yeah.
sure. So, I PR was my major, so I knew it was either journalism, public relations. Um, I did um, I did a stint right out of college with the Olympics, with the '92 Olympics, and when those were done, I returned to San Diego, hometown, and Qualcomm was hiring. I had not heard of this Qualcomm company. Uh, I end up in the Omnitrax division. Um, Knew nothing about trucking, certainly nothing about, I mean, this is 1993.
Yeah, I'm giggling a little. Some newbies might be listening to this. I mean, uh, go Google Omnitrax and Qualcomm. It's like this is a long time ago, but it
It's
was
a long, yeah, I mean, people don't realize that, the phones that you're using now and the CDMA technology you're using now, we were using in trucks to try to figure out this nationwide cellular network and also how to triangulate for GPS. It wasn't called GPS back then, but y- and this company ends up with this trucking product, and this is the early days. I mean, and I was even in the later days. I think Schneider purchased Omnitrax in 89, maybe 90. I think it was 89. So, I'm not even as early as some of the folks in the old Omnitrax world, but certainly in the 100% pioneering days of telematics and trucking. That was when it all began. And so that was really what I did in the first 7 years I was with Qualcomm, with Omnitracs and doing industry relations and public relations. So, I was teaching your reporters what trucking was and what GPS was, and then both in the mainstream media and as well as the trucking, media, as well as the trucking industry as a whole. No one no one it's hard for us to remember to go back to the '90s, but GPS was a government system, and so we used a triangulation formula for Omnitracs, but, you had to explain what it was to be able to see where a vehicle was. That was unheard of back then. So 2000, what I was seeing was in those 7 years, really seeing just a lot of companies that, "Oh, I have a GPS product, I can get into trucking." And they don't realize, we're not some consumer industry, and it's a very unique industry with its own needs and language and people. And so in those years, I saw all these companies come and go, and I started LaunchIt. From that point on, have done everything from launching, brand new startups to very well-known companies that maybe were introducing a new product into the industry. So it's really been all trucking for me.
So when you uncover a new company, or see one, how do you cultivate and how do you get them to work with you? I'm guessing you've got like your own formula of who really needs your support. And when I think about it, oftentimes I think successful things have at least three things. One, a good engineer, a good finance person, and somebody who can market and tell the story. So my guess is you run in all the time to a brilliant innovator that maybe really knows the business enough to have something great, but just can't tell their story. And so you come in and do that. Do I have that kind of right?
Yeah, you do, and that's an interesting perspective, but you are 100% right on that. A lot of times, a lot of my companies, are founded by engineers, uh, and you're right about it. It's interesting how you said finance, because a lot of times that that is the falling point with a really good engineer who even has good marketing, but then they don't have really a wise business sense, and they don't budget properly, and that's where that finance part comes in. So that was very smart of you to say that. Um, from my angle, it is a combo. Um, in that messaging is one of the things that I find a lot of companies surprisingly fail at, and it's not always even just a startup. Again, I'm and have represented some very secure and well-known companies in our industry. Um, the very first thing I do is ask management, leadership, describe your company and describe your product. And you would be mind blown at how off internally people are. It's
Sure.
really quite phenomenal. So we start there, and then from there, we make sure then our external messaging is set. But, it's kinda getting in the weeds with you, but for me to know, and after this many years of doing it, I have a pretty good grasp within by the end of a phone call, if this is gonna be a company that's gonna make it or not. And it really is. It depends upon, uh, the culture, the open-mindedness, again, of the engineer, because 99 well, not 90% of the time, that founder is an engineer. And, they a lot of times, they have a little different mindset. Yeah.
So have you turned down some business because you just didn't think they were going to be either a success in general or just success in telling their story?
I guess I knew that I'd made it as Launch It the first time I turned down, uh, someone,
Great.
you know? And
Yeah.
because now reputation lies on it as well.
Yeah.
And not just their success, but I want them to be a company that's going to make it. So the last thing, and again, we saw this in those early 90s, so much of our industry, really got screwed. I should say a better word than that, but they did by purchasing products that then failed and they went
Yeah.
bankrupt. And so I don't want to see that happen to the industry. And certainly again, my reputation lies on that.
Give us I mean, if you have a real world client that you don't think they mind you sharing and you don't mind sharing, tell us about a success story. What's something, a company that maybe some of us would know about, or if you can't share the company name, just give us generalities. But how do you know it's working, and what's like kind of like what's the success in your world? What does it look like?
It's interesting. I look at it's the company, but it's also again back to the person, to who's going to be that representative, because you know as well as I in our industry, we are not a social media video hype kind of industry. We are
Yeah.
people to people and handshake. And so
Numbers.
actually, yeah, and I very much look at the person. And so and our job is to make that person an expert. So when I look back on that, and you ask that question, I always look at it as the people, I guess, just as much the product. I would have to say like, Steve Bryan of Vigilo and Dick Hyatt of Decisive,
Yeah.
um, Josh Carter of Aperia. They I think Josh was a little bit later than the other 2, but they came to me, early on, knew they they knew Josh was just out his product, he had just created it in his master's program, and, it's brand new, and same with Steve and Dick Hyatt, and both of those companies have gone on to be very, very successful. All 3 of those. Aperia is hugely successful now.
One common thread I see with those is they came to people like you and me. Yeah, I remember Josh Carter. I mean, there was not even a name for the product or the company when I met him. I mean, I think he was still working out of a backpack, slung over his shoulder. But one common thread was they didn't not come at this like, "Hey, I've got an idea to solve trucking, and you all need to listen to me." They came at it as curious about the marketplace and wanting to meet people, and then figuring out how, in most cases, probably modify their idea to fit rather than kind of shove it at us. And I think, yeah, when you talk about bankruptcy and some of those failed enterprises, it's where somebody thought before they had done their homework, they thought they had what was going to solve a lot of our problems, and it just wasn't there yet. So I think that's a common thread.
You're spot on with that. Arrogance does not win in this industry, and you're right. I think it's those that come in and think that they know best, uh, when really they need to seek some help of experts that understand the industry a little bit better. And if they're good and open, like all these people I named, it's a huge success for all. I'd also just say probably a really good time for me, and which was interesting, was representing TCA, truckload carriers, during COVID. So I've always represented tech companies, but um, TCA brought us on, and it was actually before COVID started. But during that time, and you and I both recall, the word supply chain was never in your average person's vocabulary. And, halfway through COVID, we're hearing about all these supply chain issues and what, our shelves are empty
Yeah,
and
even if we get vaccines, we can't get them out.
yeah, exactly. And so for the first time, mainstream media has never, maybe in some of my early Qualcomm days, we'd get some mainstream media attention, but not often. And I would say that year and a half during the pandemic and the shutdowns, I spent more time with Fox News and Good Morning America and, Wall Street Journal, all these people who've never really even knew who the truckload carriers were. Um, that was fun. I would say
Yeah.
from a PR perspective, that was fun to have my phone ring and there's, Dana Perrette from Fox News wanting to talk. I'm like, whoa, this is cool.
Yeah, it is, and I think, I've been hot and cold on this subject too. I mean, there's times where I've wanted to try to take on trucking's image and make it better and this, that,
Yeah.
and the other. And then you realize that, well, wait a minute, just because we're, quiet and disrespected and yada yada, that's not that bad. I mean, being modest and just delivering the goods when you need to, that's not a bad thing. But when there are certain moments like COVID and other things where, you know, trucking really needs to step up, it'd be a little nicer if we had a little bit better reputation out in the mainstream because everybody just looks at these as these big trucks that's in my way and I can't get where I want to go.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it still always blows my mind when I say to people, and I was very thankful. I got an award for the work that I do in the trucking image, and it, it's always interesting how people you say look around this room and everything you're looking at one point has been on a truck,
yeah.
and and so much of society does not realize that. So it's interesting. And I can apply all of that right now to the tech stuff where someone who's involved in tech and they get so focused they don't realize that their product needs to be understood a little bit more. It needs to be explained more. It might seem really common sense to you, but it doesn't
Yeah.
to someone else.
Right, and what drives me because this is where I think your work and the NACFE work's kinda common. I had a huge compliment given to me at a private dinner, just me and a guy, and he said that, "Mike, before NACFE came around, or maybe he said it this way, after NACFE came around, the industry got more comfortable with technology. And, we had a couple beers, Susan, so we kind of dug into it a little. And basically what I was saying is that we also, we tell the story of benefits of these technologies and just not the problems or challenges with them. And that was a pretty nice thing. So I think what frustrates you and I is when we definitely see a good new product that can do something and just we can't get out of our own way. Either the fleets can't accept it or appreciate it or look at it. And then the like we said a little bit ago, the inventor or entrepreneur can't get out of his or her own way. Just breaking that up and moving on.
Look, we survived 2008 and 9, and that was a brutal time for
Yep.
country as a whole. This this freight recession we're in, it's brutal. And typically what happens, and it shouldn't, but it does, and it's typically the money guys that do it, but marketing and PR is the first to go when things go wrong. And the technology, no one, okay, we've got to just worry about getting our freight out. And I get it to an extent, but when things are slow, that's exactly the time that you should be
You gotta
focusing resources on technology and
Yep.
and really so that you can get everything in place because you know as well as I, we're gonna pick back up. We always do. This one just is lasting a little bit longer than normal. But and so behind that is you got to make sure from the PR marketing side, you got to make sure your name is still out there.
How do events fit in? I mean, we get asked quite often, and actually in our monthly newsletter, we say, here, this is where Mike's going to be speaking. This is where Rick's going to be speaking. NACFE will have a booth here. I mean, we lay out our calendar, and people really appreciate that. And a lot of folks are trying to figure out, and right now, of course, it's tough to spend money on travel,
Yeah.
but we do it. But how do events, shaking hands, talking to people, how does that fit in the strategies of launch it?
It evolves, and that has been a huge thing for us. Because again, as we've said, this industry is people. And I throw my big technology innovators after party at MC&E, and really, and I get my clients together and we pool our resources. Um, Events are becoming, and I've got to be careful because I don't want to upset some of the associations, but they are heavily dependent upon the suppliers to pave the way and to pay an exorbitant amount of money to exhibit. And lately, I have noticed um, very little is being done for people to encourage the trucking companies to come down to the trade show floor. They're having events happening at the same time as the trade show.
Yeah.
Or more disappointing, which used to be a big part of Launch It because I know the people and I can help them with topics, would be getting clients on panels, good educational panels. Well, I've noticed last year and sadly even more so this year, all the panels are becoming pay to play. That bothers me because then it just becomes the biggest pocketbook, which maybe isn't the best product. It becomes a sales, and you're really not getting truly educated on some good topics. You're just getting
Yeah.
sold to.
Yeah, I think there's a, events, I think there's like a percent, how much of it is scripted versus how much of it is like organic. And like you don't want to have something that's so unorganized that it's just like, hey, everybody, we're going here, and there's going to be some booths and just have at it, and a bit of chaos. So I think there's some value in or some of it, like what's the split between panels and meetings, and is it public meetings or are these private meetings off to the side where on and on. So I think,
Yeah.
uh, but I think the one thing that is important is seeing people, and handshakes, hugs, high fives, fists, whatever we do, but just knowing that moment of we're all in this together, and in tough times we'll figure it out, in good times we'll not get too high on ourselves.
Yeah. I agree 100%. There's definitely a balance there. But yeah, that's the one thing I love about the industry. It's like a big reunion. I started out, as you can imagine, I was in my early 20s as a female, and not many of us at all.
Right.
And there are a lot, and sadly, unfortunately, a lot of them are no longer with us. But there's a contingency of some fleet owners that were absolutely amazing with just kind of taking me
Yeah.
under their wing and showing me around, and it was great.
Yeah, the last couple of run on less, the diversity and the um smart people that are joining our industry with some of this technology, whether it's battery electric trucks or advanced communications equipment and so forth. I mean, it's a much bigger industry than it was 10 years ago. And what would be your main advice for somebody kind of new to the industry? Maybe it's the 20-year-old Susan or 25-year-old Susan from a few years ago. What's your advice for all of us to do to help make this industry strong as it grows?
Get involved. I'm huge with that. I'm huge in women in motion and trucking, and I try to get as involved as I can. And so certainly whatever your level of expertise is, that you feel comfortable with, get involved. Find a mentor. Find someone who can, you know, help you pave the way. I still go back to the 90s. I think that was the most exciting time because it was just so revolutionary what was happening then. I think what's happened in the last couple of years, and it really started right again around COVID time when we started getting all this big VC money. We'd never seen capital like that come into our industry. I think a little bit with AI, we're going to see a lot of AI hype
Yeah.
and money coming into that. And my advice, it's going to go from both ends. If you are a tech company, again, be open-minded, be be willing to listen to either it's experts like you and me, or if it's your customer and what they really need. Don't try to shove it down their throat. And on the flip side, if you're a carrier, if you're a fleet, don't get caught up in the hype, and really do your homework and vet some of these products that are going to be coming in, because it's an unusual time for us.
Susan, thank you so much for joining me. I think the website's launchitpr.com, right?
It is, and you can get me at Susan at launchitpr.com.
Fantastic. So if you need some help, there you go, everybody. Again, thanks, Susan. Have a good day.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Rosen Friends.